Dana White thinks Mark Hunt is delusional. Following his heavyweight showdown against Brock Lesnar at UFC 200, which was later ruled a no contest after the American popped for PEDs, Mark Hunt initiated a lawsuit against his opponent, Dana White, and the UFC, alleging a contract breach. Hunt expressed his frustration with his employer for allegedly pitting him against an opponent he strongly believed the organization knew was using banned substances. On Tuesday, a federal judge in Nevada dismissed Mark Hunt's lawsuit against his former employer. The case had been dismissed prior as well, but it was revived in 2021 when an appeals court overturned prior dismissals related to battery, fraud, and conspiracy claims against the UFC, Dana White, and the Beast Incarnate. District Judge Jennifer Dorsey ruled that Hunt was unable to provide sufficient evidence to support his claims. Specifically, Hunt failed to prove that the trio of the UFC, Dana White, and Brock Lesnar knowingly deceived him by assuring that Lesnar would not be using performance-enhancing drugs in their UFC 200 bout. The judge found no substantial evidence to support the allegation. In a recent interview, Dana White was asked about the case, and this is what he had to say.
Listen, Mark Hunt he's lost so many lawsuits against us, it's insane. He's a bit of a delusional guy. He's going to have to pay some legal fees.
Dana White and company are also planning to make a major change in the organization that would help unranked fighters make their mark on the sport. What is Dana White cooking? Well, before we find out, please subscribe to Takedown MMA and turn on those notifications. Thank you. Dana White and his matchmaking team are contemplating an expansion of each division within the organization. The proposed change would see an increase in the number of fighters included in the rankings categories, going from the current 15 fighters to 20. The decision to go for this change is rooted in the difficulties faced within the welterweight class, according to Dana White.
The welterweight division would be a good example. Like we're in matchmaking, and literally the whole division in the top 15 have fights. One of the things that we talked about last week in matchmaking was now extending our rankings down to 20 instead of 15. In the room when we're looking at these guys, because we have almost the whole welterweight division lined up with fights right now.
What do you guys think? Stephen Thompson claims he will be getting 2 paydays when he steps inside the octagon to face the scariest prospect in the UFC welterweight division, Shavkat Rakhmonov. Not very long ago, Thompson was involved in a tug-of-war with the UFC over his UFC 291 pay, which the UFC withheld after he refused to fight Michel Pereira because the Brazilian missed weight. If Thompson shows up to fight Rakhmonov at UFC 296, he will get his pay for his fight against the Kazakh, as well as his payday for the Pereira fight, which he hasn't received yet. Here's what Thompson had to say about it in a recent interview.
I do believe that they are going to, I think the deal is that when I fight Shavkat, they're going to add on what they owed me for the last fight.
So they're bribing you. They bribed you.
I don't think they're bribing me, but it was the fact that I wanted somebody. Okay, so there was the thing about with the Usman, right? After that fight, Usman called me out, and I wanted that fight, but UFC kept coming back and saying, no, Usman's not going to fight you. He's going to fight somebody else, So there was a lot going on. So then Ian Gary fights, and he calls me out, obviously. And then I get a call from the UFC saying, hey, fight Ian Gary at MSG. I'm like, nah. I'm done fighting these guys that are ranked below me. Give me somebody that's ranked above me. And they're going to give me him. And people are looking at this guy, undefeated, 100% finish rate. Nobody wants to fight this guy. So here I am. I'm like, do I fight somebody ranked below me? Do I fight somebody ranked above me? Probably one of the toughest guys in the division, who nobody wants to fight. I'll fight Shavkat.
Dana White's response to Wonder Boy's comments was a little worrisome.
That Stephen Thompson was going to get his pay for the last fight that he didn't fight because of the weight miss, because he's fighting Shavkat, so he's almost going to get double pay on this next fight. I think I'm saying that right.
Okay.
That's what he said on the...
Okay. That's what he said. It must be true.
Fair enough. Thanks, David.
What do you guys think? Moving on, UFC featherweight champion Alexander Volkanovski has revealed when he will make his return to the octagon. The Aussie most recently fought at UFC 290, where he successfully defended his title by dispatching Yair Rodriguez in the third round. He is now expected to defend his title against Ilia Topuria. although he wouldn't mind facing the winner of the lightweight title fight between champion Islam Makhachev and Charles Oliveira at UFC 294. Whoever it's against, Volkanovski is eyeing a return in January next year. A mouth-watering bantamweight clash between former UFC bantamweight champion Petr Yan and rising star Song Yadong is currently in the works, according to reports. The fight will be targeted to headline a UFC Fight Night in Shanghai, China on December 9th. The last time the UFC went to China was in 2019, when strawweight champion Zhang Weili defeated Jessica Andrade to win the belt in only 42 seconds. Yan is currently riding a 3-fight losing streak, most recently losing to Merab Dvalishvili in March. Yadong is 2-1 in his last 3 fights, most recently defeating Ricky Simon. The Chinese star will be a great fight for the Russian, who's hoping to bounce back into title contention with a big win. Who do you think will win? Moving on, Chael Sonnen has given a bold prediction for the upcoming lightweight clash between Tony Ferguson and Paddy Pimblett at UFC 296. Despite being on a 6-fight losing streak, Ferguson has been actively competing against the toughest dudes in his division, whereas Pimblett, who's currently undefeated in the UFC, is coming off an injury following a tough fight against Jared Gordon. Activity will be the difference maker, according to Chael.
Paddy the Baddy is going to get whipped by Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson's a tough night for anybody. And Tony only has fought real killers. I mean, these guys that have got the nudge on Tony are the best of the best. Tony Ferguson, until just recently, has been ranked in the top 10 for his entire career. Tony Ferguson is the one that gave Justin Gaethje an opportunity. Tony Ferguson is the one that created Charles Oliveira. You can see when a guy's time is past, but you're still juxtaposing that against a guy's time who's never arrived. Paddy the Baddy has never arrived. It's a matter that Tony just slid out of the top 10. Paddy the Baddy's never been in the top 10, never even threatened to be in the top 10. A guy being on a skid while being active is a much better situation than a guy sitting out. This isn't like a hard bet.
Stipe Miocic is rooting for Francis Ngannou against Tyson Fury. The two heavyweights battled twice in their UFC careers, with Miocic derailing Ngannou's hype train by beating him via a decision in their first fight, and Ngannou mounting a comeback to knock the American out in the second round to win the belt in their rematch. With scores tied at 1-1, a third fight was always on the cards, but unfortunately Ngannou decided to part ways with the UFC. Still, Miocic is happy for his former opponent, and he's backing him to pull off the upset in his boxing match against Tyson Fury in October.
I really wanted to have a rematch with Francis. Unfortunately, he left for bigger and better things. Good for him. But after that, the only fight I wanted was John Jones. So it definitely sucks. I definitely wanted that trilogy, but unfortunately, that's the way a cookie crumbles. And listen, he's on to bigger and better things. On paper, I got Tyson Fury, one of the best boxers of all time, amazing for what he does. But you got a man who's, Francis, who hits really hard, and it's a fight. Anything can happen. I wish him nothing but the best. I hope he shocks the world.
Who do you think will win the boxing match between Francis Ngannou and Tyson Fury? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. To stay up to date with the latest happenings in the world of mixed martial arts and boxing, please subscribe to Takedown MMA and turn on those notifications. Thank you for your continued love and support.